Brilliant. Well, I think a few people are still trickling in, but we'll make a start. Firstly, thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening at Private Cellar's new series, A Glass with Our Grower. We are delighted to have Damien Chauvet here of Henri Chauvet, who is going to talk us through his Blanc de Noir and also the Brut Nature. I hope that you have the wines in the fridge. And if you do and they're chilled, then please do go ahead and open them while we're getting started. This is going to be a very relaxed evening, so we want you to enjoy a glass with it when we're talking about the introduction and everything. So please do pour yourself a glass now. Okay, so Damien, thank you so much for joining us at what is a very, very busy time of year. I know we're all very excited. Then there's lots of participants here. They don't have their videos on, but if you have a question, post it in the chat and I will keep an eye on the chat and endeavour to answer it or pose it to Damien when we get a chance. So do ask anything that any burning questions you have. Okay, brilliant. Well, to start with, I think I would like us to, we have a short video recording from our wonderful buyer and master of wine, Nicola Archdeacon Butler, which I'm going to share with you as she wanted to also say hello to you all. So I'm just going to share that now. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, very nice to see you here. We're so excited. We have Damien Chauvet from Henri Chauvet and Fils, and we're really excited to have him with us tonight. We have worked with Chauvet. They joined us on this journey on day one of Private Cellar, and we are still as happy as ever that we're working with them. I got some of the Blanc de Noir, which is made from Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, but Damien will tell you about that in a minute. And it is just paradise in a glass.
Brilliant. Lovely words there, and thank you very much to Nicola for that short recording. This was taken actually at a tasting we had the other week, and I must say, as seems to be increasingly the norm, your wines were the favourites. So well done. So Damien, I have your presentation with some wonderful pictures from history, as well as some other things which you're going to talk through and show us. So shall I get that started now?
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe some people are knowing me. So I've been,
Here we go.
Okay. So you start with the Brut Nature. So hello.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. We'll come to that.
The first one. Okay. This is, I have to comment the pictures. So this is, okay. You start with my great-grandfather. In the middle, you can see Henri Chauvet. He was my great-grandfather, born in 1875 and died at the First World War in 15. And he had enough time to have 2 children. One was the son, and was René Chauvet, was my grandfather. And René Chauvet had 8 children, and the first son was my father, is my father, and his name Henri Chauvet. So it's a big family.
And what year did your family first start making the wines?
Could you just repeat this?
What was the first year when you made the wines?
The first year you make the wine, we are not really sure, but you can imagine this picture is made in 1907. So we know that they were making champagne in the beginning of 19. So, but it really starts after the Second World War in the 60s, when people start to have money and cars. So it really started with my grandfather. But at this time, my great-grandfather was wine grower and grafter.
This is your grandfather here, this lovely...
Yeah, he was a grafter. You know what grafting is? Grafting, have you heard about the phylloxera?
Yes, of course, but I'm sure people would be really interested to hear about it because we know it was a thing, but to see what was happening in reality is really interesting.
In 1890, disease called field Cellar started to destroy all the vineyards in Europe. So, and they discover that when you graft with the virgin vine is the root. So we graft the virgin vine with the Pinot Noir, the Chardonnay. So the roots of the virgin vine are like a filter, and then you graft outside of they do it on the table. They in the summer they just mark the plant with where they have good nice grapes, nice leaves, and in the winter they keep the wood of this plant and they keep it at home and they graft. It's a selection like you can do for the cows.
Mm-hmm.
And they graft it on the table, put it in a box, and then you can see my great grandmother with the box on the side. Then they place it into a hot room and humid room, and then they rebirth, and then they place it into a nursery in spring. They place it into the sand, and they can water it. They can spray. They can take care about the babies, and then in the next spring they replace it into the fields, and then you have a new plant.
A new plant which crucially was resistant to phylloxera. So Champagne was able to move and Europe was
and
able
Europe, everywhere in the world. Okay, it's the same. And now you graft everywhere in the world, in the same.
Absolutely. And that was just one of the challenges which Champagne has faced. And I'm sure we'll talk about other ones which they've faced and overcome as we go through. But it's lovely to see these old labels, and it's such an honor to be working with you as the next generation of Chauvet, taking it forwards in this family run Champagne house. So it's super. And talking of that, it's not just you, is it?
It's my wife, Mathilde. Maybe you saw her at the private cellar tasting. And we are often drinking champagne. I'm sorry, we drink champagne with the oysters. You can see the oysters. Fantastic. And oysters and champagne are the best wedding.
So how does it work? Who does what? Or do you both? Because it's very unusual. And one of the reasons I think Nicola is so proud to work with you is because it really is you and Mathilde doing so much in the winery. It's not, there's no machines going around doing everything. It's this is a real family run operation, and you're still doing so much by hand. So yeah. What does Mathilde do and what do you do? Who does
what do I do? So I always say to my customer, we have three jobs. So we are a wine grower first. We are a farmer. We produce the grape. We transform the grape into wine and champagne, and we sell. So it's like a team. We have Mathilde and I and three other people, and just 5 people for doing all the job, plus the harvest and people who work with us during 10 days. But together it's very. I work with Mathilde all year. And in the office, we are often together. So
it's a true love story. I think if I worked with my husband, then maybe only one of us would be left now. So it's very good. Well done.
Sometimes it's hard to. Do you work with your husband?
No, I don't. And no.
So sometimes it's nice to, because my challenge was, my father was only selling 30,000 bottles a year. And when I started in 87, I decided to one day producing the maximum, and the maximum is 75,000 bottles a year. And we've reached the maximum 15 years ago. So that's it's done. The job is done.
And that keeps you very busy. I know when we were talking just before we started this call, you were saying that the last I'll come back to the presentation, but you were saying that the last few months have been very busy because you've sold half of the year's production in the last 2 months.
Yes, the last 2 months, because people used to drink champagne and to buy champagne at the end of the year for the Christmas and New Year. And, every year the same, sell lots of bottles. It's 35,000 bottles in 2 months. So it's a lot of work because we sell mostly to private customers, and private seller is our only the biggest customer. But often we have a lot of small customer. I mean, 30, 48, 60 bottles maximum, and 6 bottles sometimes by post. And we ship a lot of champagne, and so it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, small customers are great and all customers are great, but that is a lot of work when it's small pieces here and there. How many bottles are sold in the UK versus France?
In the UK, I don't know, I to private seller, I sell about 3,000 bottles. But since the Brexit in the past, we used to have a lot of English customers, but now they only can take by 12 bottles of sparkling each. So we carry on to see English people, but just for a few cases, 4 cases, but not more. It's too bad. I hope it, and some are passing the border with some more, some are paying the tax, and some are saying nothing.
Well, hopefully after tonight we'll all be drinking more champagne, so I think that would not be a bad thing at all. Okay, let's return to the presentation, and we're so lucky. We are so lucky to get so much. I think it is. We are very lucky.
Yeah.
So back to the presentation, because I have so much that I want you to talk about before we do taste the wines. So here we have. So next of all, whereabouts, can you explain to everyone where you are in Champagne and why this is special?
Okay, then on the map you can see Reims, that's the biggest city in Champagne, and Épernay. Épernay is the geographical center of the vineyard. And you can see you have the center of Épernay. In the south of Épernay, you have the Côte de Blanc. West, you have Vallée de la Marne. And we are in the Montagne de Reims, mountain of Reims, a mountain of 300 meters, but it's a mountain because it's very flat around Reims. It's very flat, and then we have a small mountain, and we are on the mountain. So our village is Rilly la Montagne, 1,000 inhabitants, 42 different brands of champagne, and we are here since 4 generations and maybe more.
For a long time now, a long time. And if you were to describe, is there a style of the village where you're from, or something famous about it?
A style in where
you have a lot of Pinot Noir, don't you?
We have a lot of Pinot Noir in the mountain of Reims. Côte des Blancs, you have a lot of Chardonnay. Okay, Vallée de la Marne, you have the Meunier, which is another black. But Montagne de Reims, you have a lot of Pinot Noir. And we have 60% of Pinot Noir, 10% of Meunier, and 30% of Chardonnay.
Okay, perfect. So I think we've got a picture of your beautiful village here.
In the picture, you can see the forest, the mountain, the village, and then the train, the railway road between, and it stopped because we have a tunnel who passed through the mountain of Reims. So, so the village has been developed more than the other because of the train. Because the train came in 1850 and developed the village much more than the other village, because the train was the best way for shipping, for everything.
Okay, so this really helped with the exports at the early days for your great grandfather, I suppose.
Oh, to export, they didn't export. Maybe it was because some winery dig into the ground in the village, and a lot of cellar has been digged in the village in the same moment. because it was under the village, you have chalk, and then you can dig, and you have no water. The chalk is very easy to dig. And then we will see on the next picture that you have a very special cellar. And so just one thing about the tunnel who passed through in the village, it developed the village, but it destroyed the village too. During the Second World War, the German was building some V1 bombs in the village. And in 44, the English destroyed the village with the bombs, because to try to destroy the tunnel, because the train was during the day they were staying in the tunnel, and at night they was traveling on the way. So, but now it's now we have the villages. The cellar remain in good and safe, and then we can see a nice cellar.
Well, that brings us on very nicely, because one of the things we promised to talk about was your cellar. Yes. And in case you're wondering where I am in the UK, unfortunately, but I'm also just on the highest steps of Damien's cellar, just to to feel like I'm also in Champagne. So here we go. Here's the picture, in case you can't see it in my picture properly. Damien, perhaps you'd like to explain about this incredible cellar, and we'll go through the photos.
Yes. This cellar is at 11 meters. It's digged in 1892. It's written wall in 1892, and you have 52 steps like this. And then we often we'll have to show this, because it's a treasure. It's a family treasure.
And the cellar, the great thing is, this cellar isn't just it's not just for show. You really use it. And
I really use this. And then on the next picture we can see some bottles, some pupitre. Yes, you can see that we have two big galleries like this, and then we have the pupitre, the rack where we turn by hand the bottle. And
just quickly to stop you, because you're very humble, Damien, but most people are no longer turning bottles by hand, which is called riddling. Most people are using big gyro palettes, which do it automatically. And this is such a skill and an art form, because the process involves turning it. Is it how often would you turn the wine? How often do you turn the bottles?
We turn on the pupitre. We have 50 pupitre. It's 6,000 bottles. Okay, so we have to turn. Each bottle is turned 10 times. Okay, about 10 days, one time a day. Okay.
Okay.
After 10 days, we transfer it into the palette. You can see on the picture on the neck, the picture down. And then
quickly, before you go ahead,
and then
the picture on the right hand side, which has the bottle with the lees in it. Can you explain to people why you're turning, why it's important?
When you have two fermentation, one in the vat, one in the bottle. Okay, the first in the vat we produce the still white wine. We start again another fermentation we do it after the bottling. We do the bottling in February, and during 2 months we have the second fermentation. Yeah. And then the sugar added at the bottling will be transformed into alcohol, pressure. And after 2 months, the yeast have nothing to do; they fall down, and it stay when the bottle are flat. The sediment is on the bottom, and then after a few years of maturation on the lees, we have to replace the bottle on the pupitre, and at the beginning it's flat, and then we turn 1/4 on the right about every day, and we push a little the bottle, and after 10 turnings the bottle is finished, is almost vertical, and then the yeast is down the neck, that you can see on the other picture. And then we transfer it into the other palette, the red palette you can see, then it's stored upside down and stay like this until the opening day.
Super. And this is what makes champagne so special, isn't it? It's these aromas. Well, I'm not sure how much more we can talk about this without tasting the wines. So shall we taste the wines, and then we can always come back to the other pictures when you're explaining?
If you want, no problem.
Okay, so first of all, we're going to try the Blanc de Noir first, which we have here. Here we go. Now why did you want to taste this wine first, Damien?
Because tonight we cannot taste all the rum, so we have to choose to champagne. And I think it was important to talk about the sugar into the champagne.
Yeah.
When we open the bottle, we add some sugar into the champagne. We add some sugar to make the wine easier to drink. So we add just a little sugar to finish the blend. It's like when you add salt on your dish or on your bread, for example.
Yeah.
And, it's the same for the champagne. You need to add some sugar, but just a little.
So the most common style of champagne is Brut, isn't it? And this is what this is. And this is
between 3 and 12 grams a liter. We add 7 grams a liter in it.
7, always 7.
Always 7, yes, 7. And I will explain why in the future we are going to decrease a little this level.
Okay.
But you have to know that in the past 200 or 300 years ago, they were adding 20 or 30 grams a liter of sugar. It was very, very sweet.
Yeah.
So it is the opposite. And in the past, you had some demi-sec, which is a very sweet champagne, but nobody wants this kind of champagne.
I think it's really interesting that you always add 7, because there's 2 factors here. First of all, you want to have the consistent style, right? So you're choosing to always have the same dosage, but at the same time, the vintages are changing so much every year. So I'm surprised that you're not, when it's a cold year, you don't add more, and warmer year you add less. But
I say always, in the past, when I started, it was about 10 grams, but in the past we were cutting the grape at the end of September, and sometimes it wasn't too mature compared to now. Okay.
Yeah.
And people used to drink champagne with a lot of sugar, but we had to hide the acidity. We need the balance between acidity and sugar. And now we change because the weather is changing. We now cut the grapes at the end of August or beginning of September. It's very different. So
and the other thing, when we were talking about this before, the other thing we were talking about, in addition to dosage, there is another winemaking technique which a lot of people are talking about in champagne in terms of climate change, and that's malolactic fermentation, which is a technique which is when the fermentation occurs, which converts the harsher or the tangier malic acid to lactic acid, which is smoother and creamier. Now, the result of, without getting too techie, because I'm worried, I know that you're here to drink champagne and not talk about too much about winemaking, but when this conversion occurs, it means that the acidity decreases, broadly speaking. So as a result, some winemakers, such as Roederer's Cristal, for example, they don't let the MLF, the malolactic fermentation, happen. But interestingly, we were talking about this, and you said that you do let it happen. Could you explain the rationale for this and why you like it?
Okay, you have to know that. So malic is it's not a technique. It's the bacteria are working. Okay, so if you do nothing, if you don't have a lot of sulfite, it will happen. You don't know when, but it will happen in spring, for example. But when you produce the white wine, you need to choose if you stop the malolactic or if you let the malolactic. For all the red wine, you let malolactic because you can't imagine acidity into your red wine.
Yeah.
If you produce pink or white wine, you have to choose. So the problem with the acidity, the malolactic decrease the acidity, but change the taste too, because the taste of the malic acid is different from lactic acid.
Yeah.
Malic acid is citrus, like citrus fruits aromas, and lactic acid is stronger. It's more, it's stronger, and you have some more fruit, more body. Okay, and the big companies like all the known brands, want to have the freshness, want to keep the freshness, and the best way to keep the freshness is to stop the malolactic. Then you can age, you can let a long time. I don't like this because you need to add 1/3 more of sulfites into your champagne, so you risk a headache.
And that's because you have to add the sulfite because the wine is less stable.
So
if it hasn't been through the malolactic fermentation, there's a risk that it could.
Yes. Okay. And if you decide not to make the malolactic, it can happen in the future within your own cellar of the customer. So I let it because if I change it, if I stop it, I will change the taste. It will be different, and I don't want. So anyway, I always all my customer and I say nobody wants to keep too long the champagne. The champagne you drink it, so don't keep too long the champagne.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because there's this perception that really old champagne is always the best, but actually.
Yeah. It's not because it's old that it's better. Okay, that's very simple. It's better young. For me, I prefer. So we all have our own taste. So, but I think it's better young or old, but not too old. 7 years. It's not too young.
Well, I think this Blanc de Noir is beautiful. It's so well rounded and it's so complex. I think it's really, really a great expression. And this is 80% Pinot Noir, did you say?
80% Pinot Noir and 20% of Meunier. So just black grapes, only black grapes. Okay, and so with
that's why we get this really nice kind of a bit of a red apple crunch. It's really lovely.
And you can have the red fruits aromas.
So food pairing. If you and Mathilde are sitting down for dinner, what would you enjoy drinking with this? What would you enjoy eating with this wine?
Eating with this, we saw the picture. We are eating often the oysters, and that's the season. We are eating oysters maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and we have a friend who sells some oysters, so we eat very often the oysters.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that sounds really nice because oysters are quite creamy as well, aren't they? So I can imagine them being really complementary.
But the oysters with the Brut nature, okay, maybe.
Yes, which actually you're very good, Damien. Thank you. You're reminding me to move on because otherwise time will fly. So if you would kindly move on to the next glass, we now have the Brut nature, which we're going to taste. Okay, so what do we have here and why is this different to the Blanc de Noir?
Okay, the same blend, but no sugar added after opening. So your impression will be different. It's less fruity. No, fruity and sweety are not the same, but the sugar increase the fruit sensation. Okay, so it will be little bit more acidic, but not too much. I think it's easy to drink, even if you have no sugar, and more bubbly too. I don't know if you have the sensation. it's you have some more bubbles because we don't add the sugar. It's so better. And then
So
it's
fresh, isn't it? Wow. I think without the sugar, the acid the perceived strength of the acid is much higher. I've just seen, I need to apologize because I think that the chat function wasn't on before, but now it is. So if you have a question, please do post it in the chat. So my apologies for that. Brilliant. This wine is so different though. Really, really nice.
just one piece of sugar for one bottle. Okay, it's not sugar.
And it's because obviously the sugar is kind of playing an important role. Is it sometimes, is it changing do you think it changes the structure as well of the wine?
It changed. It's not, we are not equal for this. Some people like the sugar. Each time I taste the true champagne, each time we don't have the same opinion. Sometimes young people prefer maybe with the sugar, depending on your experience with the champagne. And the more experience you have, the more you will let the sugar and you will forget the sugar.
I must say, I love this style of wine. And I know when Nicola saw it, she was really keen to make sure we shipped it. And we're lucky because you don't make much. Nick is asking why you make a Brut Nature. What's the aim? What drove you to make this style?
Why? I don't know. I just follow the taste of my customer and I follow the climate changing. So
yeah, very sensible.
I have to follow the climate because the acidity is decreasing, and we saw this year especially. So the wine I have in my vats is now in malolactic. I can hear every day the bubbles. It's in a month I can hear the bubble, and then it's alive. Okay. And then my laboratory told me that we don't have a lot of malic acid, so the decreasing won't be too high. So I will see in about two weeks the real taste of the year. Okay.
Yeah.
But sure, in the future I will decrease the quantity of sugar, and then I will go from 7 to 5.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting. So do you think, obviously, this maybe is a good time to talk about the vintage and the vintages we have had, because the last few years have been pretty crazy in terms of what's been happening in the vineyard. So I know, for example, in 2020, if we go back a couple of years, aside from all the crazy things happening in COVID, in Champagne, you were forced to limit the yield. So you were the CIVC limited you to 8,000 kilograms a hectare. Yeah. For context, the average yield, I think, is around 10,000 kilograms per hectare. Would you say?
Yes, in 90 we had a lot of grapes, but the discussion between the big company and the small one grower stopped at 8,000 kilograms.
And this was just 1 second, because this was really difficult, because the big guys were happy to reduce the yield. They just had enormous harvests. They had lots of reserve wine. They didn't mind if it was a really reduced yield, but the growers who are relying on the vintage for providing the bulk of the wine and keeping the supplies going, they needed the higher yields. Is that right?
Yes. You need, for living, we need more than 8,000. 8,000 is not enough to live. It's just the limit, the minimum limit.
That's the break even basically for you.
10,000 to 12 is good. Okay.
Yeah.
But 8, you have many things to pay. You have to pay the workers. You have to pay everything, and then 8,000 is not enough. Okay.
Yeah.
But we couldn't at this time. We couldn't understand, but it was in COVID moment. So
yeah.
But we didn't know. Now it's easy to talk about the COVID because the level of the selling is now like it was in the past. This time everything stopped. So everybody says we cannot buy a classic harvest. So we had to let the grape into the field to the bird, and we do nothing. And then
See, that's just heartbreaking. It must have been, I just can't even imagine with this crop that you've worked so hard for, you just have to leave it on the vine. It's awful.
But you know, at this moment, everybody says, why do they go down until 8? We can't understand, because you know the discussion, it's always the money we decide, and then you have to know that the power of the big companies. I'm not here to talk about this, but you have to know one thing: 80% of the field belongs to the small one grower, so 20 for the big. But 80,
I think this is amazing. 80%, and that's not just one or two. There's about 16,000 growers, aren't there?
Yeah.
I think, and this is a lot.
And the other number is 80% of the champagne is made by the big companies. So they buy the grape.
And that's just, I think there's under 400, there's 370 champagne houses, and there's 130 co-ops. So that's pretty incredible, really, isn't it? That we're tasting, we're tasting your champagne, one of the 16,000 growers who are making 20%. We're very lucky.
And in the future, a lot of brands are disappearing. The small one grower, because the big company are buying a lot of carry on to have some. And in the future, we have to produce some more. When I say we, I talk about the wine grower like me.
Yeah.
We need to carry on and to.
You at the grower champagne is the beating heart of champagne. It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. It's lovely, and it's that I always think. I remember when I first was studying, and I found out that that each of the champagne bottles have these two letters. Whether it's so, for example, for you on the back of the label, it has a small RM, which is recollant manipulant, which means this is a grower champagne. It's someone who wants to put their name on the bottle and say, I've made this. This is how we make it. This is mine. It's a real expression of pride, isn't it?
Yes. And then you can ask me all the questions you want. I can answer for the work outside, for the champagne making, for the selling. We do everything. We do all the jobs.
Yeah.
And, it's when you start, you don't know. How can I remind me? How can I forget? Your father explain. You have to how to read it out. Explain. I wasn't sure to be sure to make all the jobs properly, and for me
it's pretty amazing. You're a team of 5 and you're making 75,000 bottles.
And my wife and I, we work a lot. And,
I mean, I believe it. You're not just making Pinot Grigio in stainless steel. You're making traditional method, hand riddled sparkling wine. So yeah, I think you must work very, very hard. So what can people expect of the 2022 harvest? What does that look like?
We first of all, we blend the years. In Champagne, it's a non-vintage, it's a LV,
Yeah.
Non-vintage. So we blend the years. So we have an average of 2 years of last year. We have some reserve wine in it.
And how much reserve wine do you normally use?
30-35% of reserve wine.
Okay.
And so the quality, I think, the year was very good because no rots, no frost, a lot of grape, good flowering. So the harvest was perfect.
And obviously it was a really hot summer.
Yes.
Because even in the UK it was hot.
Not so hot because 2 years ago, some bunches has been burned by the sun, and this year no, it was the limit for 35 is the limit when you have 40 degrees or 45 degrees, it's too much.
Shutting. Yeah.
It can make the benches dry.
Mm.
So
you didn't have problems with that though this year. That's amazing, really.
yes, it was good.
I think it must be the soils, because the chalk has such good water retention
in it, and we have to be careful with the sun. We need some shade to protect the grape into the shade, so we don't, in the future we won't cut the leaves much to keep the grape into the shade.
So you'll grow the canopy so it's providing some like a sun
like they do in the south of France. So we have to be careful with the sun. We have to look at the forecast, what will be the weather, and we don't cut too many grapes, too many leaves with the tractor.
I think I mean, there's so many things. The world is changing with climate change, and there's so many things which you're doing to adapt. How about, are you doing anything which is trying to help with the sustainability and trying to make the planet better?
To make, we since many years we stopped to use the herbicide. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I have a tractor who just turn all the summer with I do this on my tractor. I can see all the field in 1 week. I turn with the tractor and I don't know the name, to take away, to scratch, to put the bad herbs, and then you have to clean the ground with the tractor, and no chemical product for this. And I'm sure in the future, if the weather stay like this, I could be organic one day in 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we all will be organic one day.
Well, there's a real drive and a movement in France, I think, for this kind of like HVE and these kind of environmentally conscious certifications, and it's great. It's wonderful to hear, I think.
Actually, we are HVE, we are HVE, and since many years. And then I know someone told me that the level will be to be HVE will be harder in the future. It will be more difficult to be HVE. So it's good. I think because it's too easy to be HVE, and then in the future it will be harder.
Yeah, I think so as well, because I know they have different levels now, so it will be interesting to see how that evolves.
Because being organic, sometimes if the weather is bad, like it was last year, only last year it was very, very rainy.
Yeah.
I knew you have the same weather.
Well, I think in 2021, I know it was really challenging, because you had 30% loss to frost, and then after that we had a further 25% loss to mildew. So a really challenging harvest.
Some organic wine grower have no grape at all, zero.
It's very difficult.
So it's good, because last year we had a lot. So last year we used the part of the reserve wine. And you have some reserve wine. Last year we used reserve wine for and we had the quota, and we had some more grape. So we were allowed to cut some more grape and recreate the reserve wine. Yes. So now we have a reserve wine, so it can.
Well, it's good. I'm very glad, because I think, like I said before, the soul of Champagne is you guys. It's the growers who are, the smaller quantity Champagne who's doing it with their families, and who are pouring their love into the bottle. So it's I think we've just about run out of time, unless there's anything else you'd like to cover, Damien. Are you happy? You've done fantastically, and I think it's been a really, really great presentation. The wines are delicious, and I hope you all have really enjoyed them too. As a special treat, if you decide that you would like to buy any of the wines you've tasted today, you can get 10% off if you use the code GWG10. So it's glass with grower 10. So there's a little thank you for us for taking part in this. And I hope you've enjoyed meeting Damien as much as I've enjoyed talking to him. So thank you and good night. Enjoy the champagnes. Bye-bye.